In a small town lived Maria, a woman with a strong heart and calloused hands. Maria was a cleaner and her life was not easy. Every day before the sun even thought of rising, she was already up, ready to face another day of work. The alarm clock went off at 4 a.m, a piercing sound that echoed through her modest home. Maria got up carefully to avoid waking her husband, Jose, who worked nights as a security guard. She put on her faded blue uniform, styled her gray hair in a tight bun, and after a quick black coffee, left to catch the first bus of the day. The journey to the city center was long and tiring. On the bus, Maria gazed out at the empty streets, lost in thoughts about how life had brought her to this point. She remembered the dreams she had when she was young, to be a teacher, to travel the world. But reality had always been harsher than her dreams. The need to support her family had set all those plans aside. When Maria arrived at the building where she worked, she was greeted by silence. The offices were still empty, and she took advantage of the quiet early hours to start cleaning. Each floor had its own story, but Maria was not part of them. To many, she was invisible, just someone doing the necessary work so that others could live their lives comfortably. Her work was hard and meticulous. Maria scrubbed floors, cleaned bathrooms, and polished furniture with dedication. The cleaning products, with their strong smells, seemed to seep into her skin, making her hands even rougher. Time passed slowly, but Maria did not allow herself to rest. Every day she fought against fatigue and back pain, always thinking about Jose and the possibility of a better future. Sometimes during a brief break, Maria would look out the window and see people starting to arrive for work. They passed by her without noticing, absorbed in their own worlds. Maria, however, knew those spaces better than anyone. She knew where every speck of dust hid, where the stains were most stubborn. After hours of intense work, Maria would return home exhausted but with a sense of duty fulfilled. The little time she had before Jose left for work was spent preparing dinner and taking care of the house. Despite everything, there was love and respect between them, a silent companionship that kept them together. Maria would lie down in bed, feeling her body heavy but her mind always active, thinking about the next day, the bills to pay, the dreams she still cherished. She knew life was tough, but inside her was a strength that kept her going, a stubborn hope that refused to fade away. It was a regular afternoon like so many others when Maria's life took an unexpected turn. After a long day at work, she stopped at a small bakery to buy a fresh loaf of bread, a little luxury she allowed herself now and then. The line was long, and to pass the time, Maria decided to check the lottery numbers she had bought a few weeks earlier, almost forgetting that the ticket was in her uniform pocket. With the crumpled ticket in hand, she looked at the numbers printed in the old newspaper she had found at the bakery. As she began to compare them, her eyes widened. "It can't be," she murmured to herself. One by one, the numbers matched. Each match made her heart race and her breathing grew rapid. It was as if time had stopped in that moment. "Let me check again," she thought, almost in disbelief. She read the numbers once more calmly, and realized there was no mistake. Maria, the cleaner, had won the lottery. A feeling of pure and uncontrollable joy overtook her body. She felt a mix of euphoria and disbelief, as if she were in a dream she feared waking up from. At that moment, the bakery transformed. The people around her seemed to float in slow motion, while Maria struggled to hold back tears of happiness. She wanted to shout to the world, share her joy with everyone, but she held back. Instead, she clutched the ticket tightly as if afraid it might suddenly disappear. With quick steps, almost running, Maria headed home. The path seemed shorter and more beautiful than ever. The trees, the streets, everything seemed to shine in a different way. "My life is going to change," she kept thinking. At that moment, she began to imagine all the things she could do with the money: a new house, a long-dreamed trip, maybe even going back to school. When she got home, Maria locked herself in the bedroom and looked at the ticket again. It was still there, proof that her destiny had changed. The initial joy was so intense that she could barely breathe. She lay on the bed, holding the ticket against her chest, and let tears of happiness stream down her face. For a moment, all her problems, all the struggles she faced, vanished, replaced by a radiant hope. Maria knew that night would be different from all the others. She fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of the bright future now within her grasp. Life had given her an unexpected gift, and she was ready to embrace it with all her heart. In the days that followed the incredible discovery, Maria felt as if she were living a double life. On one side, she was still the same cleaner who woke up early, took the bus, and worked hard to clean the offices. On the other, she was the newly minted millionaire, holding a secret that could completely transform her existence. Maria decided firmly to keep the ticket a secret. She told no one, not even Jose, her husband. There was a mix of fear and caution in her heart. She knew that if people found out, everything could change. Friends could become opportunistic, and her life could turn into a whirlwind of problems. At home, Maria hid the ticket in a safe place, inside an old jewelry box her mother had given her years ago. Every time she passed by the hiding spot, her heart raced, reminded of the fortune waiting for her. The decision to keep the secret brought a sense of power, but also a weight. She wondered if she was doing the right thing, but feared the consequences of revealing the truth too soon. As she cleaned offices and hallways, her mind wandered to thoughts of what to do with the money. Amidst the smell of cleaning products and the sound of vacuums, Maria daydreamed. She imagined buying a new, large, and comfortable house where she and Jose could live without worries. She thought about traveling to places she had only seen on TV and helping her family members who were also struggling to get by. But there was also a voice whispering doubts in her mind. Would Jose understand her decision? What if somehow he found out the secret before she was ready to tell him? Maria knew that trust between them was crucial, but she felt she needed a clear plan before revealing everything. On a cold night while Jose was at work, Maria sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. She began to make lists. She wrote down what needed to be done first: consult a lawyer, learn about investments, understand how to manage a fortune. Each word written was a step toward the future she wanted to build. Despite all the excitement, worry wouldn't leave her alone. Each passing day, the secret weighed heavier on her shoulders. She wondered if she was becoming someone she never wanted to be, a person dominated by money and fear. But something inside her told her she was acting for the greater good, that she needed time to organize her thoughts and make the best decisions. Maria was at a crossroads where every step had to be carefully considered. She knew that soon she would have to make difficult decisions, and that the secret she kept could be both her salvation and her downfall. So, while the world around her went on normally, Maria lived through an internal drama, waiting for the right moment to act and turn her dreams into reality. With each passing day, the tension inside Maria grew. The winning ticket, which had once been a source of joy, began to feel like an overwhelming burden. The nights of peaceful sleep became rare. Now she spent hours awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what to do with that fortune. And it was in the silence of the early mornings that greed began to whisper in her ears. Maria, who had always been humble and honest, started to be overtaken by thoughts she never imagined having. With all this money, I could have everything I've ever wanted, she thought. Fantasies of a luxurious life flooded her mind, and the temptation to leave everything behind and start anew on her own seemed more and more appealing. During work, the objects around her seemed to transform. With every desk she cleaned, she imagined a bank account full of money. With every window she polished, she saw the reflection of a wealthy and powerful woman, very different from the Maria she knew. And with that, greed sank its roots deeper into her heart. Maria began to question whether she should really share the prize with Jose. She thought about the nights he had ignored her, the small arguments they had, and suddenly these memories became justifications for something bigger. Why should I share this with him? She asked herself. The idea of keeping all the money for herself started to seem not only appealing but fair. She began to plan in secret. She started to consider divorce as a real possibility, believing she could use the money to free herself from all constraints. The advice from friends and acquaintances on how to protect her prize echoed in her mind, reinforcing the idea that this money was her chance for change, her opportunity to finally live the life she had always wanted. Over time, these thoughts began to affect her actions. Maria became more distant from Jose, avoiding his questions and spending more time away from home, thinking about how to hide the fortune and start over. She even started to view him differently, as if he were an obstacle rather than her life partner. In a moment of reflection, Maria realized that greed was taking over. She felt torn, struggling against the conscience that reminded her of the love and loyalty she had always had for Jose. But the temptation was strong, and the prospect of a new, trouble-free life was almost irresistible. And so, Maria found herself on the brink of a decision that could change everything. Greed had planted its seed, and she was about to choose between the love she knew and the seductive allure of a life of wealth. Deep down, she knew the choice wouldn't be easy, and that whichever path she chose would carry profound and lasting consequences. Carrying the secret of the winning ticket and battling her own demons, Maria decided to seek discreet advice. After all, she needed someone she could trust, someone who could help clarify her thoughts. She reached out to Anna, her longtime friend, and Marlene, an acquaintance who always seemed to know a bit of everything. On a sunny afternoon, the three met at a cozy cafe. With her heart racing, Maria decided to share her story, but left out some details. She talked about the possibility of winning the lottery, presenting it as a hypothetical situation, she said. Anna and Marlene listened attentively, and it was Marlene who broke the silence first. "Maria, you have to think about yourself. If this were true, why would you share the prize with anyone? After all, you were the one who bought the ticket," Marlene said decisively. Anna, usually more cautious, agreed as well. "Marlene is right, Maria. How many times have you worked late while he stayed home? Maybe it's time to think about your own future." These words echoed in Maria's mind. She knew on some level that her friends were right. However, there was still a part of her that felt guilty. But the conversations continued. In subsequent meetings, Marlene began to suggest more concrete ideas. "You should consult a lawyer, Maria. Make sure everything is in your name, and if divorce is the way to go, then do it. Think about what this money can do for you." Seeing Maria's hesitation, Anna tried to soften the situation. "Look, Maria, I know it's a tough decision, but think about what you could do with that money. How many things you could buy, how many experiences you could have. Maybe you should take some time away from Jose to think things through." These conversations began to shape Maria's thoughts. With each meeting, the idea of divorce became more tangible. She started to view Jose with a critical eye, noticing every small flaw and imperfection, using them as justification to follow her friend's advice. Sleepless nights became even more frequent, filled with plans and possibilities. Marlene, with her assertive stance, kept encouraging her. "Maria, you deserve more. Don't stay with someone out of guilt or loyalty. This money is your chance to be happy, to live the life you've always dreamed of. And frankly, Jose has never truly appreciated what you do." Even Anna, who had initially been more reserved, started supporting the idea. "Think of the sacrifices you've made, Maria. Maybe it's time to think about yourself and put yourself first." And so, with these pieces of advice echoing in her mind, Maria began to take concrete steps. She secretly consulted a lawyer and started preparing for what would be a drastic change in her life. Greed, fueled by her friend's words, grew stronger and stronger. Maria was about to cross an irreversible line, believing that her friend's advice was what she needed to hear. But deep down, a faint voice tried to warn her of the possible consequences. However, the allure of a new, free, and prosperous life was irresistible. She was ready to move forward even though the path was uncertain and full of risks. Maria spent weeks wrestling internally, but she finally made her decision. The weight of greed combined with Marlene's and Anna's advice had sealed her fate. She walked into a lawyer's office feeling a mix of determination and pain. The lawyer, an experienced man with a stern gaze, listened to her story and began preparing the necessary documents for the divorce. The process was swift but painful. Maria chose to keep the decision a secret until everything was finalized. She returned home each day with a heavy heart, knowing that every moment with Jose was numbered. He, in turn, had no idea what was about to happen. He continued with his routines, trusting in the stability of their marriage, oblivious to the dark thoughts that plagued Maria. Finally, the day came when Maria could no longer postpone it. She waited until Jose was sitting in the kitchen, exhausted after another long night at work. With trembling hands and a heavy heart, she handed him the divorce papers. Jose looked at the documents in disbelief, pain etched on his face. "Maria, what is this? Why are you doing this?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. Maria looked away, unable to meet his gaze. I need to move on, Jose. We need different things now," she replied, feeling each word as a stab to her own heart. The days that followed were a blur of painful emotions. Jose tried to talk, to understand, but Maria remained resolute, driven by greed and the false certainty that she was doing what was best for herself. He eventually accepted the inevitable, but the sadness in his eyes never faded. Maria moved into a small apartment, taking with her the winning ticket and a sense of emptiness she couldn't explain. The house she once shared with Jose now seemed like a distant place, filled with memories she tried, in vain, to forget. With each step she took toward her new future, the shadow of guilt followed her. Loneliness began to settle in. The nights were quiet, and Maria found herself thinking about Jose, his laughter, and the small things they did together. She tried to convince herself that this was for the best, but doubt lingered, eroding her resolve. The divorce process was completed quickly, and Maria found herself officially separated from Jose. She felt as if she were drifting in an unknown sea, aimless and unanchored. The decision that once seemed clear now left her disoriented, lost in an ocean of regret and uncertainty. And so, Maria faced the reality of her choice, trying to find solace in the fact that the winning ticket was still with her. But the truth was that each day, the pain of the separation and the weight of her decision sank her deeper into an abyss of regret. She wondered if she would ever escape the darkness she had created for herself. Maria woke up early that morning, her heart still heavy from the recent separation. She decided it was time to take the next step in her new life. With the winning ticket safely stored in the old jewelry box, she felt a mix of anxiety and hope. She dressed carefully and made her way to the lottery office where she intended to claim her fortune. The atmosphere in the office was calm, almost monotonous, in stark contrast to the storm of emotions inside Maria. She approached the counter and handed the ticket to the clerk, a middle-aged man with a weary expression. He took the ticket and began processing the information in the system. Maria watched his every move, her heart racing with each passing second. Suddenly, the clerk's expression changed. He furrowed his brow, looking at the ticket, then at the monitor and back at the ticket. "Ma'am, could you please wait a moment? I need to call my supervisor," he said in a neutral tone. Maria's spine tingled. Something was wrong. Minutes later, the supervisor, a stern-looking man, arrived and took the ticket. He examined it carefully before turning back to Maria. "I'm sorry, but this ticket is fake. It does not match the winning ticket registered in our system." Maria felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "How can it be fake? There must be a mistake. I'm sure this is the winning ticket," she said, her voice trembling. The supervisor remained calm and explained that the real ticket was registered in the name of Jose, her ex-husband. The revelation hit Maria like a punch to the stomach. Everything she had done, the separation, the sleepless nights, the greed that consumed her, had all been in vain. The truth was devastating. The winning ticket had always been with Jose, and now he was the only legitimate millionaire. Stunned, Maria left the lottery office feeling completely empty. Each step felt like a Herculean effort. The city around her, once full of promises and possibilities, now seemed cold and distant. She recalled the conversations with Marlene and Anna, the advice that led her to make drastic decisions, and felt a mix of anger and regret. Maria wandered the streets aimlessly, trying to process the new reality. The tears finally came, silent and unending. The feeling of betrayal, not just from Jose but from herself, was overwhelming. She had destroyed her marriage, her trust, and her own sense of integrity, all for an illusion. When Maria finally arrived home, her small, lonely apartment, she collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. The silence was deafening. All that remained were the hard lessons learned. Maria realized that greed had clouded her judgment, and that the consequences of her choices were irreversible. And so the harsh reality set in. Without the prize, without her husband, and without the illusion of wealth, Maria was left alone with her reflections, facing the bitter truth that she had lost everything because of her own greed. The small, lonely apartment felt emptier than ever. Maria, sitting on the edge of the bed, stared blankly at the floor, unable to fully grasp the magnitude of her losses. The silence in the apartment was unsettling, filled only with the echoes of the wrong decisions she had made. Everything she had built, everything she had fought for, had crumbled before her eyes. She slowly got up and walked through the apartment, each step a painful reminder. The space, which once symbolized a new opportunity, now felt like a prison she had created for herself. Every object seemed to whisper her failures, each wall reflecting the image of a woman destroyed by her own greed. Nights were the worst. Maria lay in bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, she replayed every moment, every wrong choice, every piece of advice she had blindly followed. She remembered Jose's incredulous look when she handed him the divorce papers, his confused and pained words, and how she had distanced herself from him, believing she was doing what was best for herself. Now, Jose was far away, and the distance between them felt insurmountable. Work, which had once been a refuge of routine, had become a torment. Maria went back to cleaning offices, but now every task felt like a cruel reminder of what she had lost. The laughter and chatter of the employees seemed to mock her situation. She had become even more invisible, a ghost among people who unknowingly continued with their lives. The news about the fake ticket spread quickly among her acquaintances. Marlene and Anna, who had encouraged her to follow the path of greed, now avoided her gaze. They, who once seemed like friends and advisors, vanished when Maria needed them the most. Shame and humiliation had become her constant companions. Each passing day, Maria felt the weight of total ruin. There was no turning back, no way to undo the damage caused. Greed had eroded not only her possessions, but also her dignity. The winning ticket, which had promised a bright future, turned out to be a trap that led her to lose everything. And so Maria, the woman who had dreamed of a better future, found herself plunged into a dark reality. Loneliness, shame, and loss were now her new life. Without her husband, without the prize, and above all without the dignity she once had, she faced the harsh truth that her choices had led her to this complete ruin. Over time, perhaps she would find a way to rebuild herself, to find some sense of peace. But at that moment, all that remained was pain and the difficult acceptance of her new reality. In the months following the devastating discovery, Maria spent most of her days in deep introspection. The silence of her apartment became a space for bitter reflection, where she confronted the ghosts of her choices. Every corner, every object carried painful memories, forcing her to face the reality of her situation. Maria began writing in an old notebook she had found at the bottom of a drawer. The pen, once a tool for dreams and plans, now moved slowly across the pages, recording her reflections. She wrote about her motivations, how greed had clouded her judgment, and the devastating consequences of her actions. "How could I have been so blind?" Maria wrote, her words blurred by tears of regret. She thought of Jose, how he had always been her faithful companion, and how she had abandoned him for an illusion of wealth. Every memory of his smile, of their moments together, was a knife stabbing her heart. She realized that she had traded genuine love for an empty promise of happiness. The nights were long and lonely, filled with incessant thoughts. Maria recalled the conversations with Marlene and Anna, the advice that had pushed her down the wrong path. She thought about how she had allowed others' influence to shape her decisions. "I wanted so badly to believe I deserved more that I ended up losing everything that truly mattered," she reflected. In her introspections, Maria also confronted her own nature. She realized that greed wasn't something that appeared out of nowhere, but was a feeling slowly cultivated by the hardships and frustrations of her life. The winning ticket had only been the catalyst that brought these feelings to the surface. "If only I had valued what I already had," she thought with bitterness. Each day brought a new understanding. Maria began to realize that the true prize was never the money but the people and moments that filled her life with meaning. "Wealth isn't in what we possess, but in the connections and love we share," she wrote, feeling the weight of this truth. She also realized that the lost dignity wasn't just about financial ruin, but the betrayal of her own values. Maria saw herself as a stranger in the mirror, someone who had betrayed her own convictions for a hollow promise. "I was swayed by the false glitter of gold, forgetting the priceless value of integrity and honesty," she reflected. These bitter reflections were painful, but also began to plant seeds of change within Maria. She knew that to move forward, she needed to forgive herself and learn from her mistakes. The path to redemption begins with accepting our flaws and resolving not to repeat them, she wrote with determination. Although the weight of her wrong decisions still haunted her, Maria began to find small glimmers of hope in her reflections. She understood that despite everything, she still had the chance to rebuild her life, rediscover her dignity, and appreciate the true riches that had always been within her reach. And so, in the silence of her apartment, Maria took her first steps toward redemption and rebirth. Maria's journey of introspection, though painful, began to reveal a faint light at the end of the tunnel. She knew the road to redemption would be long and difficult, but she was determined to take each step with humility and courage. The first decision she made was to seek out Jose. She knew that even if he didn't forgive her, she had to at least try. With a heavy heart, Maria returned to the old house where she had shared so many moments with Jose. As she knocked on the door, she was met with a silence that felt eternal. When it finally opened, Jose's eyes revealed surprise and a sadness she recognized instantly. "Jose, I just want to talk," Maria said, her voice trembling. He let her in, and she began to open up. She talked about her reflections, her regrets, and how she had been consumed by greed. Jose listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he sighed deeply. "Maria, what happened between us was painful, but I see that you're trying to change, and that means a lot." Although the path to regaining Jose's trust was uncertain, Maria felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had taken the first step toward redemption. With this small progress, she began to focus on other areas of her life. Maria returned to her cleaning job with a new perspective. Instead of seeing it as a burden, she began to view it as an opportunity to reconnect with the humility and dignity she had once dismissed. She dedicated herself even more earnestly, finding a strange comfort in the physical work. With each surface she cleaned, she felt a bit more purified from the stains of her past. She also started to get involved in community activities. She participated in support groups, where she shared her story and listened to others. These interactions helped her realize that she was not alone in her struggles, and that empathy and mutual support were crucial for healing. One day, as Maria was coming home from work, she found a young woman crying on the sidewalk. She sat down beside her and started a conversation. The young woman, named Clara, was going through financial and emotional difficulties. Maria saw a reflection of herself in Clara, and with a heart full of compassion offered help. The friendship that developed between them brought a new sense of purpose to Maria's life. Gradually, Maria began to rebuild her life piece by piece. She learned to appreciate the small joys, the smile of a stranger, the gentle breeze of a spring morning, the feeling of a job well done after a day of work. The greed that once consumed her was replaced by gratitude and humility. She also revisited old dreams like studying. She enrolled in evening classes, determined to gain the education she had always wanted. Each class was a new opportunity for growth and self-discovery. Maria felt that at last, she was on the right path. Maria's relationship with Jose began to strengthen again. Although the path to full reconciliation was long, both were willing to try. They started spending more time together, rediscovering the friendship and love that once united them. Maria understood that true wealth was not in money but in human connections, love, and integrity. The harsh lessons learned from her greed had transformed her deeply, and she now lived with a renewed purpose, determined to build a life based on genuine values and an open heart. What would you do in Jose's place? Would you take Maria back or use all your money to search for a new love? Comment below what you would do, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this.